Okay, so I have this GraphDB here. I have already created some repositories and loaded some data because that's the boring part of the whole thing. So we're talking about talk to your graph, and you can find it in the same place where it used to be in when we first introduced talk to your graph. You just talk to your graph version 2. And if we go there, it already looks very different from the old one. There is a lot more explanation of what's going on here, and there is this big button in the middle that you must press to start. But in essence, the difference between the previous version of Talk to Your Graph and the new one, a huge difference is that in the old one, there was a single interface, a single chat, and the only thing you could do with that chat was clear it and start again. Here you can have multiple chats, and you can also have multiple agents. And an agent is essentially an instance of Talk to Your Graph that you configure to work with a particular dataset and repository. So let's create our first agent. Here you enter a name. This can be really anything. I notice people often avoid entering spaces here. It's perfectly fine to have spaces here because it's just the name that you as a human use to identify this thing. Then you have to choose the repository. It already pre-selected the repository I had already in the workbench, but you can choose a different one. And then a major difference from the previous version is that the previous version used only the ChatGPT retrieval connector to extract information from GraphDB and then send it back to the model, and then the model could summarize, translate, convert whatever this information into a response to your question. Here you have several different methods that you can choose to extract information from GraphDB, and some of them are way easier than others to set up. Just as an example, the ChatGPT retrieval connector is just as complex as before. It needs to, you need to create the connector instance first, and if you haven't seen the connectors before, that can be a bit tricky. So let's try the simplest one, which is the full text search. Full text search, it just works if you enable the full text search index when you created the repository. It's an index that you can also enable at a later point by editing the repository. And the nice thing about this is that it doesn't need any other configuration. You just have to click here and we are ready to create our agent. I'll explain briefly about the other settings later. And once the agent is selected, in order to start chatting, so this field is disabled, as you can see, I have to select an agent. I only have a single agent. And now I'm ready to start asking things. And you probably know, those who have seen me do this demo before, you already know that the first question I ask with the Star Wars data is, who is Thor, Luke, or his sister? It's already a tradition to ask this. And the moment you ask the question, the chat will appear here in the list of chats, and you wait a bit for the response. And then here you see the response. Now you might be wondering, how did this happen? How did Talk to Your Graph get this information? There's this magic wand button here that would show you what the model did. So the model called the full text search query method twice. Here's the first time, the second time. And what's important here is that what the model passed as a query to the full text search is just this bit here. So just look in this case and just Luke's sister in this case. And then we took this raw query and then we wrapped it into a SPARQL query that uses the full text search index in order to provide the results. And if we now click on this button here, it will open in the SPARQL editor, execute the query, and you'll see exactly the triples that were sent back to the model. So as you can see, it signs a huge chunk of information, especially on this data set where there are translations of many things in many different languages. And let's try, you can hide the explain thing, we can try asking other things, just to show that full text search sometimes gives you very good results, sometimes not so good ones, but it's the advantage is that it's very easy to set up. So we can ask something like, who are the pilots that fly with Luke? And sometimes with the full text search, you might get a good answer, sometimes not so good, because it all depends on, oh, in this case, it actually gave a very good answer. It's even the details of those people. So it's Wedge Antilles and Han Solo. And yeah, here it probably mentions somewhere. Well, let's ask. What are the ships? Just because I'm lazy to read this big text. And here you can see a bit of not so good result, because it listed more vessels than those that Luke shares with other pilots. If this was SPARQL, it would have been better, but I just wanted to show that full text search works, but doesn't always give you good results. So let's now try to edit the agents. So all the agents are available here. You can manage them through this interface if you have more than one. But if it's just the agent that you're using right now, so this one here, you can also manage it through this button here. And I can simply also add the SPARQL here. I have to know what my the name graph of the ontology of this data set is. And I actually am not quite sure, so I'm just going to have a quick look here. Okay, it's this one. And now is probably the place to explain a bit about the other settings. Each of these 4 query methods can be enabled. You just need to have at least one of them here. So once I save this, I'll have 2, SPARQL and full text search. There is also an additional query method that is not good at answering general questions, but will help the model identify the IRIs of certain things. For example, if you ask something like, what's Michael's phone number? It might do just fine with SPARQL or with the regular full text search or any of the other things. But with something like this, it will be able to find out everyone whose name contains Michael, even if there is a slight spelling mistake. Then the other settings are just standard OpenAI things, such as the model use, the temperature, the top P parameter. And here you have additional instructions. And for the additional instructions, I actually plan to enter something here for the Star Wars thing, so I'm going to do it now. It's just this bit. You can use this field to tell the model what the data set is about, because then you gave it context and it will be much better at figuring out exactly what you want. For example, if I put this text here and when I say Luke, it already figures out that it's Luke Skywalker just because the model also uses its general knowledge. And then there's this button here, which will give you the combined instructions that are used when the agent is converted into an assistant object. So assistants are the agents and what they're called on the OpenAI side. And the entire instructions consist of just a simple introduction that gives the agent an identity. Then there's the additional instructions I just entered. And then if you enabled SPARQL, it includes these 3 other bits. First, an instruction that tells you how to use SPARQL with some hints what to do and what not to do in order to write good SPARQL queries. And then a simple sentence that introduces the text of the ontology and then the actual ontology of the dataset. So let's save this. And now I can just continue the same chat because it's the same agent that I edited. I can ask things like, let's try something like, I'm even not sure about the spelling of Chewbacca, but let's see what happens. So it figured things out. It tells me that the tallest Wookiee is 210 centimeters, and the average height of humans in the Star Wars universe is 180. And we can have a quick look at this, and we can see that this time it used 2 SPARQL queries to figure this out. So let's move on to the next data set, which is a bit more interesting. I'm going to create a new agent. So I can do that by clicking this button here. And this agent has to do with Ontotext employees. It uses the Ontotext repository, and I only want to use SPARQL. And just because I'm lazy, I put the ontology in the example value here, so I don't have to change it. And in this particular case, I want to try without entering any additional instructions. So before we start asking things here, I'd like to say something about the dataset. The dataset was generated by ChatGPT using the JSON file that Bamboo produces. So if we look at the files I've imported for the Ontotext repository, it's this file and this file. These are previous tries of the model. So the entire thing happened by me instructing the model what to do. And even in this case where it produced something invalid, I just told the model I can't import this because I got this error. I just copy pasted the error and it corrected itself. So we'll be now using something that answers questions about data, and the data was converted using the same model that will answer the questions. Now, if you go back here and we start a new chat, we want the other agent called Ontotext employees. And so now we can first try something like how many employees are there? Should be 126. That's correct. If we have a quick look at the SPARQL query, here we can see something interesting. The model tried these 2 SPARQL queries. With the first one, it didn't include the prefixes. And what we did in this case behind the scenes, we just sent the error back to the model. So that's the exact error message produced by GraphDB when you use an undefined prefix. And then the model corrected itself, tried the query again. And none the wiser, we didn't even see that. We just got the right response. And we can also ask things like what departments are there. Or maybe, so let's try something like this. And we get a list of people, and now we can continue what are their positions. Because sometimes when you ask about people, it gives you a lot of details about them. Other times, it just gives you the names. It all depends on the randomness of the model. And now we get, again, back the list of people. And now let's try something like just pick one. How do I contact Ilian, for example?
Now ask him, how do I purchase enterprise license agreement for millions?
You just email this, send an email to this address, and that's how it happens.
As simple as that.
Yeah, and an interesting thing that we discovered while developing the new Talk to Your Graph is you might have noticed that, I don't know if we have, what the model actually replies back is not simply text, but it's markdown. So just by chance, we discovered that it can do pictures. And in this particular data set on Bamboo, there are pictures of the people. So those things made it through the RDF conversion. So now I can say, show me the faces of those people, no names, just photos. And here we hit a bug, which happens in live demos. Let me just have a quick look at. Okay, let's try a new chat. Okay, I really wanted this to happen, so it tells me there might be no marketing people or something like that. And if we have a quick look here, we see that the department name is, it searched for a department called marketing. And if we quickly switch back to the previous chat and scroll up, we'll see that the name of the department is actually this one. So now we can try the thing with models is that you can talk to them exactly like they are interns, children, whatever. And as you can see, once I follow up with something like that, it quickly realizes that something is broken and now gives me all these pictures together with the names. Now I can be really insistent and do something like this. And we end up with this nice grid of people and their faces. And let's try something different. For example, so it gave me quite a big number of people here, not exactly what I wanted. So let's try to help the model and offer something like and this helped the model to figure out that the guy to talk to is me. What else? Asking who is the CTO should give you back Vassal. And now we want more information. Here you can see that it tried a bad query, and in this case, it happened while producing answers, so we saw the progress. And here it did really good. It showed me the names, email address, image, title, department, phone number, time zone. If you're wondering why it says Europe Minsk, that's just what Bamboo gives back when I didn't change any of the data. And Vaso reports to person with IRI, so let's be insistent. So as you can see, when the model fails to produce exactly what you expect, and even if you didn't look at the explain, you can sometimes just simply ask the model to clarify something, ask the model if it's sure, and it will do its best to accommodate you and try to produce a better answer. And the final thing I wanted to show you, I'm going to clone this agent because I want to try slightly different settings. I'm going to call this Ontotext employees fun. Keep using SPARQL, just add additional instructions. Something like answer using poetry, and just for the enjoyment of the people in Austria, let's put this, and let's create a new chat. Choose the new agent, and now we can ask, for example, who is the CEO? And as you can see, it answers in German, and it's rhyming. So let me see my list if there was anything else I wanted to show you. I believe that's all. It's really different from the previous talk to your graph. There are a lot more settings to choose from, so it's really much more powerful to accommodate more use cases. And if you ask me what should I choose here, it depends on your data set and the kinds of questions you want to ask. But if you have an ontology that is more or less a good ontology, you can always enable SPARQL. And if you want to also cover things that SPARQL doesn't do good, you can click the full text search, or you can do SPARQL and one of these two. Similarity search is similar to full text search, but uses GraphDB similarity index. But again, that's just like the ChatGPT retrieval connector. It's something that you have to create beforehand. Fortunately, creating a similarity index is easier than the ChatGPT retrieval connector. So it all depends on your use case, but as a rule of thumb, SPARQL plus something else is a fallback.